Well, good. So then we were kind of going to get into some of the forensics involved with the Hitler
Yeah,
thing and kind of how how you've kind of drawn your conclusion and how
right,
you're really comfortable with your
right.
conclusion.
Very comfortable.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. So during season 2, as I mentioned before, I was very clinical. I'm a real investigator, so I investigated, and I don't take anything on face value. It doesn't matter who it's coming from, usually. And so I dig deeper.
Stalin or anybody.
Any
Yeah.
of that. Yeah, no, not Stalin. Yeah,
Right.
I would love to be sitting here talking to him. I got a lot of questions for him. One time, there were some documents from Argentina, and I can speak Spanish. I can get around, okay? But I had my wife, who's a native Spanish speaker. I said, look, would you do me a favor? I want you to call the Minister of Interior, or Ministry, not to speak to the minister, but the Ministry of Interior in Argentina, and tell them, and she's a professor, and I said, tell them that you're my assistant, and you need certain information. So she did. She called down to Argentina and said that she was Dr. Cencich's PA, and that we needed this information, and told them a little bit about who I was. Oh, yes, ma'am. Si, senora. We'll get everything for you. And they got all the information that I wanted, and I got it. She translated it into English for me, and so I verified facts that were presented to me. Some of them I was able to see they were true, and some of them they weren't. It's nobody's fault, but I wanted to know what the truth was. And I did this with everything. So coming to the forensic evidence, I dug deeper and deeper and deeper. And I saw that in 1972, and I'm off the top of my head, I could be off on the year, but I think it was 1972, there was a Norwegian, well, he was perhaps became an American citizen because he was in the United States, but he was originally from Norway, scientist, odontologist, forensic odontologist, teeth. He'd been teaching at the Harvard and doing medicine, undertaking dental medicine at the Harvard Medical School, and became the first dean of the UCLA Medical School. No slouch, okay? And he worked with other scientists. It was peer-reviewed throughout the globe, not just in the United States. And he examined certain artifacts. Well, what happened was this. This is such an interesting story. That prior to that, it could have been 1970, 1969, before he does the examination, that there had been some architectural work, engineering work in Berlin, West Berlin, and near the Lehrtar railroad station. And they were excavating some things, and they found the remains of 2 people, 1972. Now remember, Martin Borman is missing. Martin Borman was last seen in the company of one of Hitler's doctors, a guy by the name of Stepfeger, I believe. I might be mispronouncing the last name. And there was a third person there, Arthur Axmann, who was the head of the Nazi Youth Party. Well, they're there trying to escape. They had been at the Führerbunker, and the 3 of them are beating feet. They're trying to get out of the Russians or the Soviets. They're there, and they're trying to get out. Fire is going here and there, mortars, and Arthur Axmann says, "I'm not staying," and he gets out, and he gets away. He says, last time I saw them, the 2 of them were together. Somebody else came by, I can't remember who it was, and they thought that they had seen these 2 people deceased. I'm not 100% sure on who that was. It could have been Axmann again, but someone saw the 2 people deceased in that vicinity. So, the railroad station was built over this. And we have all these sightings of Martin Borman, that he's in South America. He's a high-ranking party official. And that came up. Stalin talked about him. Other people talked about him. But when they were doing this excavation at the railroad, the remains of two individuals, deceased individuals, were unearthed, and they did the examination. He does an examination. Let's just focus on one of them, and he is able to determine that it is Borman, and because of dental records, and he can see that it was clearly him. I mean, in hunting Hitler, people said that Martin Borman, and it's not hunting Hitler's fault, it's not their fault, but people were saying while we were doing this show that he was buried in one of the South American countries. I don't remember which one they claimed he was buried in. And, well, so I produced this. So, well, he can't be buried in South America. Here's unequivocal analysis, determination that Martin Borman was one of the individuals here. He had been seen there. Arthur Axman put him there. And now the bodies, and he gets away. He was with two people, and the bodies of two people are there. And Dr., let's see if I get his name, Ryder Sugnes. And pardon my pronunciation there on the Norwegian.
It's
but
close enough. Okay.
And he does the examination, and based upon dental records and also reconstruction of the skull with X-rays, he determines that it is Martin Borman. So he was never buried down there. But someone comes up with the bright hypothesis that perhaps he was. You ready for this? Perhaps he was exhumed from the grave in South America, and somehow he was buried in the same spot that he was seen in Berlin. All right, impossible. I don't know who came up with that, but it's just no way. But we'll let that slide. The big thing is Hitler, and so the same Dr. Sugnes, the same forensic odontologist, he is able to examine the photographs or the diagrams that had been produced by these two dental assistants that I had mentioned to you before, Kathy Hausman and another, who at one time had been in custody of the Soviets. They got them to write statements, and they were the ones that did the diagram. So he has those. But now look, unbeknownst to a lot of people, and this is big, the United States government and our archives here in College Park, Maryland, held X-rays of Hitler's head. So the Soviets had the skull and the mandible, not sharing that with us. We had the X-rays, not sharing that with them. And so what does he do? And why do we have these X-rays? Well, there's different theories, different statements. One was a prior assassination attempt on Hitler, and I think there was a movie about that where a Nazi or a German went in there and tried to placed a bomb there, did go off, and that he had a concussion from this. Didn't kill him, obviously. And there was another theory that he had these sinus problems. I'm not sure which one it was. It doesn't really matter. He has these X-rays. And the X-rays are taken from different positions. The X-rays weren't there necessarily for the teeth. It was for either the sinuses or the concussion. Nevertheless, he's able to take a look at those and examine them and forensically put the mandible together and compare that with the diagrams that had been drawn by the two dental assistants. And then he goes on and talks about the necessary degree of proof that he would need as an expert witness to go into court. And I think he used a term that I'm not so sure that I don't recall what it was, but it was probably something like a preponderance of the evidence. or a prima facie case, something that would say, yes, in a civil case, this is him. This is all you need to meet. The greater weight of the evidence, this is him. I looked at the numerical scores that he did, and we don't need to get into how he comes up with the mathematics, but I looked at his scoring, and he comes to the point, let's say it was 6 points to have this preponderance of the evidence. It goes way up, like to 26 points, which is conclusive. It's a full stop. There's no way that this is not Adolf Hitler. It's just no way. It's impossible, because you look at the extensive bridge work, you look at what he's missing, what he's not missing, where he has a prothesis, where he doesn't, all of that was drawn by 2 people exactly the same, and then his forensic reconstruction of those x-rays. This gives us conclusive proof, not just enough proof to make a case in a civil court, not even beyond a reasonable doubt, even more than that, beyond any doubt that that was Hitler. So I gave that information to the producers, and they were very glad to have it. They filmed me presenting it, kind of like I'm presenting it here, but I had the diagrams and had everything. And unfortunately, and I'm not being critical because I'm not in the movie business, and you know what my business is because I've already gone into that. But they said that a business decision, let's just put it that way, a business decision was that it wasn't going to be aired, and they wanted a season 3. So they wanted a season 3. There's a lot more to put into season 3. So I'm not saying that they're wrong.
They were making money. They didn't want it to end. And
I guess so. Yeah. And
you think they wanted to come back and get to that later? Or
they never did.
They never did.
No. So what happened then was I thought that might be the case, but unfortunately it never happened. Then, so I wasn't there for season 3. And then after season 3, I think they did a special episode, or at least at the end of season 3. Bob Baer was still there, and there was another person that I think was a former retired female FBI agent that took my place, and they just said the search goes on, the hunt goes on. So, a year ago or so, I was contacted, and I have the email. I can't remember the name of the newspaper, and it's Daily something, but I'm not sure I remember exactly the name of it. So I don't want to say it was this, and then because there may be more than one than that. So this guy reaches out to me, this reporter. So, well, I spoke to Bob Baer, and I'd like to talk to you about, Hitler. And, you did this years ago. What do you think? And he says, because Bob says, and I read the article, he says, well, Bob says that, the evidence is, the hunt should still go on. I said, well, really, I don't know why he's saying that, but he is, and I have a lot of respect for him. But I went through and I spent probably a half hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, telling him about all this forensic evidence and how conclusive it was. All right. And you can Google this up, but you hit one of those paywalls. And so I had to have the reporter send it back to me without that, so I could read it. And, well, 9/10 of the article was Bob Baer talking about, how this could be him, and the hunt should still go on. And then toward the end, and I don't care that I only got a little bite of it. The point I'm trying to make is the bite that I had, and that was attributed to me. It says, well, Dr. Cencich is more cautious about this, more cautious. And, okay, well, what do you mean more cautious? I just told, and I wrote him back. I said, well, what do you mean more cautious? I just told you that it was incontrovertible, that evidence, conclusive evidence that it was him. It's not, I'm being more cautious. He died in 1945. And he said, but we got a lot of, I forget his term, but eyeballs on the paper or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but hey, we got a lot of readers and we're happy. And I said, well, I guess more cautious is the best I can get out of a tabloid. So I guess it's the nature of the business. And he wrote back and said, it is the nature of the beast. and we left it there. So people thrive on this Hitler. It's interesting. I mean, that's why I'm here today. That's why they did the show, and there's every reason for it. And I get emails constantly at work, at different places that I work. They Google me up. That's fine. They have more evidence about Hitler and all that. People love it. It is interesting. I find it interesting. So I don't fault anybody. But I'm here to tell you 100%. Hitler died in the inside his Führerbunker. Now the French, we tried to get in. And I had a connection with a Russian outlaw motorcycle gang. Well, we would call them an outlaw motorcycle gang, but I guess this motorcycle group was very well connected with Putin. So my connection had a connection with that outlaw motorcycle group. They went over there and talked to them, and they agreed that they would try to help and that we could come over. It never came to fruition. And so we never got in, and I thought that it would help. The French, in 2017 or 2019, I'm not sure which, there was a Dr. Philippe Charlier, I think, and the Russians did give him access. And this is important because he examined it and determined that it was Hitler. And he faulted the 2009 American scientist, saying that he took DNA from a charred section of the skull, which wouldn't have been as valid. That's where he determined that it was a female, not a male, and that they determined that it was male. And they, of course, this time, though, they got the opportunity to look at his teeth. That in 2009, the American scientists didn't get that opportunity. So I'm not faulting anybody. You have to take it the way it's given to you. And I'm sure he did the best. His team did the best that they could. So that's been published and peer-reviewed. I don't think it was necessary because we had the information from Dr. Sugnes, the Norwegian American from Harvard and UCLA, what he concluded. But now you have another scientist, a French scientist, and I'm sure they did a very good job. It's a slam dunk. He's dead. And that's that. But it's interesting.